We are continuing on with our NHL season previews today. Today we're looking at the Montreal Canadiens. How are the Habs team changed from last year, and will we get different results? We'll discuss what our thoughts are coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're looking at the season preview for the 23-24 season for the Montreal Canadiens. In case you're new to this series, we've already completed a few teams already. We're going by division and kind of going at this a little bit randomly, but we've already completed Buffalo and Detroit. Montreal's next here on the list, and we're going to go through the other Atlantic teams before we move on to a new division. Essentially, we're going to look at some stats from last year, look at the results, top scorers, look at their cap space, and then we're going to compare how the team changed over the course of the offseason, take a look at any prospects we feel are, impacting things this fall as we go into training camp, bounce back players, breakthrough players, what are their lineup going to look like this year, and discuss how we think they're going to do. So let's first get off and take a look here at last year's results. So let's look at 22-23, where the Habs were a bottom feeder in the NHL, last in their division, 68-point season, 31-45-6, so not a great year. They did get a high draft pick, of course, in the 2023 NHL Draft because of that, and they will continue to build through the draft here, likely over the next few years. I mean, looking at their team stats between their goals for and against and special teams, they ranked pretty low in all categories. They were 26th in goals for, 232. They were 29th in goals against with 307. The power play was 29th with just over 16%, and the PK was also 29th with 72.7%. So those are not good numbers at all. They were led by their top scorers and captain Nick Suzuki with 66 points. Kirby Dach, who had certainly missed some games due to injury, put up 38 points, but he only appeared in 58 games. And, of course, we had Cole Caulfield as well, putting up 36 in 46 games. So, certainly, some of their younger players like Dach and Caulfield had good seasons. They just missed a lot of time. And Caulfield ended up with a serious shoulder injury after he got off to a phenomenal start, scoring a good amount of goals there. Obviously, the Habs have missed the playoffs the past 2 years. In 2021, of course, the playoff format was a little bit different. We had a unique situation with the bubble format, but they did lose in the final that year, losing to Tampa, which was an odd scenario that they were kind of representing the Western Conference after beating the Vegas Golden Knights. It was just a weird format. And based on the traditional formats, if the season would have been able to complete it, Montreal likely didn't even make the playoffs. But because of the updated changes, they got in. And as you say and see before, just get in and anything can happen. And that was a prime example with goaltender Carey Price and Shea Weber leading the way, playing out of their minds, and dragging that team all the way to the final, even though it's fair to say they certainly overachieved. Took a major step back to the following year, and then the year after that, of course, last year. So now we're on our 2-year streak of not being in the playoffs. Right now, salary cap space-wise, they're not in the greatest shape. They are in LTIR. Right now, they have about $5.7 million available, but that's what's available within their LTIR pool because they are technically over the cap already. So they certainly are looking to free up some space if they can do that. Now let's take a look at how the team has changed over the course of the offseason. Look at the subtractions and then the additions, and there's a lot of change here for sure. Looking at the subtractions first, so we saw a few defensemen and a lot of forwards end up leave town. Mike Hoffman's no longer with the club, so he's gone via trade. So was Rem Pitlick. They were both changed franchises during the Erik Karlsson 3-way deal. Joel Edmondson was traded to Washington. Of course, they picked up Jeff Petrie, but then traded him again. I have him down as a subtraction, but I guess he could technically appear on both lists. But he didn't play last year in Montreal and briefly was on the roster throughout the offseason before being moved again. Jonathan Drouin's time in Montreal came to an end, of course, signed with the Avalanche as a free agent. Denis Gurianov did not stay with the organization as well after being not qualified as an RFA. Chris Tierney, who was picked up later in the year, was not retained. Paul Byron, who was out for a long time with injury, is now a free agent and believed to be retired and working with the club off the ice in another capacity. I believe in player development. I've even seen him do some on-ice stuff with the team as well. And then, of course, Alex Belzil, also no longer with the club. Additions for players that have come into the organization. You get Alex Newhook, who they acquired via trade from Colorado, as well as Casey DeSmith, who came in along with Jeff Petrie before Petrie was be traded again. DeSmith may not stick around, but as of right now and as of we record this, he's on the roster and was a player they picked up via trade. Gustav Lindstrom comes over from Detroit. Nick Beaudet as well as Brady Keeper also picked up too. So certainly, not as many players coming in as going out. I mean, the main ones, of course, would be DeSmith and Newhook, and of course Petrie, but of course he's already been kind of reflipped here out again. As far as prospects that might make an impact on the roster, well, there's possible that David Breinbacher, the first pick in the 23 draft, makes the club out of training camp. I don't know that that's likely, though, and he's expected to most likely go back and play in Europe. So Breinbacher most likely does that, but we're still going to monitor him this year for sure because he's going to be hopefully a big part of the team's future. Now, as far as some bounce back and breakthrough players, for bounce back players, I'm going to put Sean Monahan for this one. Monahan's a player who did end up getting re-signed by the Montreal Canadiens, so he's still with the team. He did have a bit of a bounce back last year, but then he got hurt and missed the rest of the season. So he's looking to bounce back for the second year in a row, not only with his play, but with his health as well. As far as a breakthrough player, I think you can look to the former first overall pick Juraj Slafkovsky or the newly acquired Alex Newhook. Both players are looking to take big steps forward with their career this coming year, and either are quite capable of making that accomplishment. So I think they're the main guys to watch for having a breakthrough and really taking big steps forward. Now, if you look at their projected lineup, this is courtesy of dailyfaceoff.com. These lines might not be exact, but essentially your top line they have right now is Suzuki with Caulfield and Doc. You have a second line of Dvorak with Anderson and Newhook. Third line of Evans with Gallagher and Slafkovsky. And a fourth line of Monahan with Armia and Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Now, I don't know if it's going to be exactly like that. I wouldn't be shocked if I think your top line they have there, Doc, Suzuki, Caulfield, is quite possible that stays together. It wouldn't be shocking if your number 2 center became Newhook with Anderson and maybe Harvey-Pinard. He was hot last year. Wouldn't be surprised if they give him a top 6 role to start the year and maybe put Slafkovsky on the third line with Dvorak and Gallagher. We'll see, but either way, some combination of that. Of course, that still leaves Michael Pezzetta without a regular spot. He could be the 13th forward, or maybe that becomes Armia's role and Pezzetta plays more. We'll have to see how the coaches feel. On the back end, you've got your top 4 defensemen likely being Matheson, Savard, as well as Harris and Kovacevic. And of course, you get Jack and Gooley in the mix there too. Chris Weidman and Barron are both in the mix. Weidman's hurt, or expected to be hurt maybe to start the year. I think he's having some issues with, I believe it was his back or something. So he may not be healthy to start the season. We'll have to see. But they have more than enough capable defensemen for sure. And of course, they still have 3 goalies with Jake Allen, Samuel Montembeault, and Casey DeSmith all on the roster. So having that 3 goalie tandem to me is not the greatest. But they don't want to just give somebody away. So I understand they're looking for the right deal. I think Casey DeSmith's the most likely guy to go. I mean, Montembeault and Allen have both been assured that they're not in danger of being moved. So that kind of leaves us to think that DeSmith is. And he was also asked to be patient with them while they figure out what's happening here. So is it possible Casey DeSmith starts in Montreal? It is. But I don't think that's something the Habs really want to do. So we'll have to wait and see where things go. But that's certainly something they need to address in season as well. I mean, they certainly could. They needed to clear more space. We know that they've had more forwards that they wanted to clear out. They did clear out a bunch. Obviously, like they were able to move on from Hoffman, Pitlick, and Gurianov, Tierney, Duran, etc. But there's still more than enough spaces. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw them maybe trying to move another player like an Armia, for example. That's a possibility. Even on the back end, do they try to move somebody else? Because there's all these guys here. I mean, Weidman, when he gets healthy, I could see him being a potential trade candidate as well. They have more than enough young defensemen there. So do they use one as a trade chip to try to get another piece they like for maybe the forward group? Wouldn't completely rule that out as well. I still think this team is pretty likely to finish near the bottom of the division. I still think there's a lot of growth that needs to be made, and I don't know that they're quite ready to make that just yet, but they do have a very, very good prospect pool. Outside of these guys, you still got lots of prospects. Even though I put Reinbacher down as the main one to watch, but you've got, you still have Owen Beck in the OHL, who could be very interesting this year. You've got Lane Hudson in college hockey in the States, who's going to be an absolute stud as well. So, they have some guys here that can make an impact, and they're all going to be looking to get spots here in the next year or two. So certainly Montreal might be at the bottom now, but they are building the right way, and they do have a lot of young talent to build upon and around here over the next few years. But for right now, honestly, I think we're going to have a similar type season of the Hams compared to last year. I think we're going to see the defense probably continue to be, struggle a bit, maybe a little bit better than last year. Special teams might be a struggle as well. The power play is going to be largely dependent on, obviously, Suzuki and Caulfield, especially if Caulfield can stay healthy. I can see him hitting at least 40, if not closer to 50 goals. He's certainly going to be a guy to watch this year for sure. But having Caulfield there will certainly probably slow down Harvey Pinard a little bit. I know he was on absolute fire in a run there at the end of the season. So overall, with the progress we've seen out of Detroit and Buffalo and Ottawa, I really think the Hams are likely going to still be in the basement of this division for a little bit longer. Like I said, they have a lot of good pieces, but they still have a lot more pieces to accumulate or to get into the NHL to get some experience before they're really going to be able to take some more meaningful steps forward. I think they're a team that we're going to see some more activity from. Like I said, I still think they're going to be busy through the season or even possibly even in training camp. I think Armia doesn't have a long future in Montreal. David Savard's a possibility to be moved as well. I wouldn't completely rule out Josh Anderson or Christian Dvorak either. I know that the organization really seems to like Anderson, and I do think that maybe he stays the longer, but I wouldn't rule out the possibility of them trading him if they get the right return. They certainly need some cap flexibility. The Carey Price contract, as much as everybody thinks it's easy just to slap it on LTIR, they can do that, but it's not quite that simple in how all the rules work, and it is a bit problematic that they have to go about their business that way to make sure they can accumulate as much cap space as possible and really, maximize how they do business. So we'll have to see where things go. But like I said, Montreal, I expect to be in the lottery yet again. Lots of changes for sure. Lots more players leaving than coming in. We're going to see some young guys get some more experience, some more chance to take a bigger role. And unfortunately, it's going to be another development year, I think, for the Canadiens, and they'll be in the draft lottery. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's discussion around the Hams. What do you think there's in store for their season? What are your expectations? And what do you think are the biggest questions facing the team going into the 23-24 NHL season? If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.